It's funny because I don't self-identify as a millennial, but I think I'm actually squarely in the middle of the demographic. And my interest, one of my interests is memory. And so I think maybe one place to start is by pointing out that for us millennials, this is quite literally the time of our lives. There's this strange phenomenon that psychologists have recognized as the reminiscence effect, which is to say that when we are old farts 60 years from now and we're sitting in our rocking chairs on our porches thinking about our lives, this is the time of our life that we will think about most, our 20s. And it's been demonstrated over and over again that what happens to us in our 20s personally, politically, culturally, really profoundly and durably shapes how we end up looking at the world for the rest of our lives. And so if you want to understand what America is going to look like in the future, it's worth trying to understand what this generation is experiencing and thinking about now. One of the things that I thought I should talk about is, and as I was thinking about this on the train down here, when I graduated from college in 2004, I wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about how this generation seemed to be on pace to be the first generation that's going to be more conservative than our parents. At the time, there had been all these surveys after 9/11, all the way up through the beginning of the Iraq War, that showed that millennials, people under 35, were surprisingly more hawkish on foreign policy, more trusting of government, of authority, more supportive of George W. Bush, believe it or not. And then something happened, right? I mean, if you look at the results of this survey, you can see it very clearly. Something happened where two sort of disillusioning wars happened, a devastating economic collapse happened. I think the experience of the 2008 campaign was galvanizing. And you can see that this generation has been shaped by those events. I thought one of the things that was really interesting in the survey, in which I've seen in talking to my friends and people my age, is a kind of pessimism about our future prospects. That there is an extraordinarily high unemployment rate among people who are millennials, among this generation, and that we expect that that's going to have a lasting effect on our career trajectories. Maybe to the extent even that the Great Depression had an effect on the greatest generation. I don't know. We'll see. But despite all of these reasons to be pessimistic, there also is an incredible resilience, I think, that I've seen, a kind of entrepreneurship. I mean, it's amazing to think of how many people our age are starting businesses, are launching new initiatives, social entrepreneurs. So I think we have this kind of understanding that we are not going to follow the course of our parents. We're not going to have stable careers. We're not going to end up in one job, in one company, and work our way all the way up. We're going to have to make our own way, and I think so far we're doing a pretty good job. The one thing that I have been surprised we haven't discussed yet is technology. And though I might technically be a millennial when it comes to like Facebook, Twitter, social media, all this stuff, I speak the language, but I speak it with an accent. And my sense is, especially for millennials who are still in college, that what is really profoundly different about this cohort compared to the generations that have come before is the way in which we communicate with each other, the ways in which we communicate with amongst ourselves, and I think part of the conversation we're having here is like, what is the grand narrative that we're going to be telling about ourselves as a generation? And one of the ones that's been imposed upon us is that we're a bunch of navel gazers, right? We we want to tell everybody what we had for breakfast. We think that everybody cares what we're thinking about at every moment, and that it's our right to be constantly expressing ourselves. And so I'd be curious, especially from the college students up on the stage, to hear your thoughts about how our sort of constant involvement with technology is shaping us, is shaping our values because I wonder if to come back to what Jim was saying about what is the movement that is going to define us. I sense like a kind of spiritual emptiness in a lot of this stuff, and I wonder if there's going to be a kind of rebellion against it at some point. I don't know. Yeah. I want to come back to something that was brought up earlier here that came out in the survey as well, and I think one of the things that is distinctive and unique about the millennial generation, which is our relationship with our parents. That we might be like the first generation that really likes our parents and thinks our parents basically got it right and I'm a boomerang kid myself, boomerang child, I guess is the term. After college, I moved back in with my folks for 2.5 years. And apparently this is like a pretty common phenomenon, in part because of the economy, but also in part because this generation sees eye to eye with our parents in a way that maybe previous generations didn't. And if we're coming back to this question of how we construct this narrative of what it means to be a millennial, part of your generation's narrative was our parents don't know what they're up to. They don't know what's going on. They're clueless. It's up to us to fix things. And I don't think that we have that sort of feeling.
That's interesting. I also want to come back to another thing that you mentioned that someone related in your opening remarks, the idea that there's something about the 20s, I guess almost biologically as well as sociologically, that imprints people for the rest of their lives. Is there a sense in which this is always the most important generation, or the education, the experiences of this generation between 18, 20, 30 are always going to be the most impactful? And does that have a little bit to do with the biology of memory and experience? Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, so that phenomenon I was describing, the reminiscence effect, when we're at the end of our lives and summarizing our lives to ourselves, this is the period that has salience. And it's actually not clear whether that's simply because we're having sort of the most new experiences, new memories being formed at this period in our life, or if it's because the beliefs that we form at this point end up having more salience for the rest of our lives, and we kind of are constantly referring back to them as we make our decisions and judgments as more grown-ups.